Welcome to Child's Play by EYR, a podcast dedicated to innovative approaches in education. Join us and our expert guests as they share ideas, strategies, and valuable insights to support the needs of all children. Today, we're speaking to Anissa from the British Science Association about British Science Week. We'll also be speaking to Jessica from Royal Museums Greenwich, who'll be bringing this year's theme to life by inviting you to join them for a live assembly hosted by their Curator of Time. My Curator of Time, such a good title. Let's dive in.
Thanks for having me, guys. My name's Anissa. I'm from the British Science Association, or the BSA, and we are a science engagement and education charity with a vision for science to be more relevant, representative, and connected to society. So we run education programs like the Crest Awards and public campaigns and events like the British Science Festival and British Science Week, which get people involved in science in ways that are meaningful to them as well.
Hi, my name is Jess, and I am the Astronomy Education Officer at Royal Museums Greenwich, specifically at the Royal Observatory, which is part of Royal Museums Greenwich. And my job as the Education Officer is to talk to education groups about astronomy and space, which is fantastic. I love my job. So I'm in the education team. We do things like planetarium shows for school groups and home education groups. We do workshops for both groups as well. I also do things like online CPD sessions for teachers. We have lots of free online resources designed for use in the classroom. We host a monthly podcast as well, which is called Look Up. And we also run a GCSE astronomy class, which is for older students, obviously, at the weekends as well.
That's super cool. I didn't know. Can people do astronomy as a GCSE?
You can, yeah. I didn't do one. I didn't know it was a thing.
No, like astronomy was the only part of physics that I actually enjoyed. That would have been amazing. What is British Science Week? What does it involve?
So British Science Week is a 10-day, so it's not really a week, it's just over a week. It's a 10-day celebration of science, technology, engineering and maths. And it's a time of the year that anyone can get involved in science, whether it's a local activity or a library event or something that's going on in their local museum or gallery, or most possibly at school. It's just it's a moment in the year where we try to platform science and showcase how it's most relevant and, connected to everybody's daily lives.
And the theme this year is time. So why was that theme chosen?
So this year's theme is time because it's the 30th anniversary of the week, which is very exciting. So because of that milestone, we wanted to use this year as a look back on some really cool science that's been happening around the world. So we ran a 30 Years of Science social media campaign, which looked at different innovations throughout each of the last 30 years of science. But it's also a really nice opportunity for us to look forward to hopefully the next 30 years of British Science Week and what things are going to change in our daily lives as a result of science and people getting involved in science. In terms of a theme of time, we found that more general and less specific themes work best for particularly our education audience. This makes it possible for educators, school staff to tailor their activities for their own age group. So, whether you're 2 years old or, nearly finishing school, there's a way to interpret and fit in time into your sort of science learning, and obviously across the curriculum too, because Science Week isn't just about science, it's about how it connects with all the other subjects and everything else that it goes on in people's lives.
How does time connect with other areas of science? There's quite a large scope.
Yeah, it really is. I think time's a really good, you can look at it in so many different ways. For example, you can think about measuring time and the history of, how we've gotten to the clocks and the timekeeping devices we have now. So that's something that's going to be explored in the live assembly. We're partnering with the Royal Observatory Greenwich, and their Curator of Time will be taking us through their collection of inventions that people have used over the past few centuries to tell time, to keep time and measure it, as well as history. There's you can think of time in terms of ecology and conservation. We're also partnering with Nature's Calendar, which is a nearly 300-year-old record of seasonal events in the UK. So things like flowers blooming, birds migrating, that sort of thing. So you can see time in a whole year, basically, how time is measured across the different seasons in the year. And this is really important for things, when you're considering climate change and how with each year the trends will change as a result of, the changing climate and the impact on habitats. There's that connection too. And of course, there's, physics and space and time as well, which is something that I think people of all ages can be fascinated and excited about. As well as that, there's PE, there's sports science that you can link with time, like how fast people go, how fast, how far you can throw. And there's links to so many different aspects of the curriculum. And, those are just some of them, but geography, design and technology, everything's got a link to time in some way.
Like, because my immediate thought is things like the history of the inventions and things like dendrochronology, like counting the tree rings to see how old trees are, that kind of thing. So it's really interesting to hear about like how broad a subject it actually is. I think it's a really good theme for the year.
The Royal Observatory was founded in 1675 by King Charles II. The Royal Observatory was founded with the idea that we needed help navigating at sea. So when you're navigating on land, you can have landmarks. But when you're out at sea, you can't work out how far east or west you are. So you can't work out your longitude. And that's very important because you might be about to crash into a coastline, or you might be 3 weeks sail away from a coastline. You want to know the difference. So the idea was that they could use very accurate star charts along with accurate timekeeping to work out your location, your longitude, how far east or west you were when you were at sea. So that was why it was founded, as I said, in 1675. That took over 100 years, that sort of work, that star-keeping work. And then astronomy continued, star charting work, I guess astronomy continued on the site up until we became a museum a few decades ago. So there was always a link between timekeeping there. You need accurate clocks in order to tell your location when you're at sea. And you also need accurate clocks for lots of different kinds of astronomy and accurate star maps in general. So you don't just need to know that what a star is, but you need to know when it's coming in front of your telescope, effectively, when you're going to see it rise and set.
So Emily, the Curator of Time, she'll be hosting a live assembly, which is out today. What can we expect?
Sure. So in that assembly, Emily, who is our Curator of Time, so knows all about timekeeping and clocks throughout the centuries, was showing young people across the country who've joined this assembly about the coolest bits of the museum and of our timekeeping history. And she was also joined by the Dad Lab, who is a YouTuber who does a lot of science experiments, who was doing a live experiment for this assembly, which was part of the British Science Week's activity packs, which are free to download from their website.
This is a huge part of the British Science Week campaign each year. We now have 4, so there are 3 for education categories, so early years, primary and secondary, and we also have a pack for mixed age community groups as well. And so we work with a whole load of partners who create resources with us under the theme of time this year. And all of the activities are, easy to run, easy to do, and easy to follow, with equipment and items that you should be able to find quite easily, whether that's in your classroom, in your kitchen at home, or, something hopefully that you can get from scrap stores or charity shops. But it's a really good starting point for your plans and activities for Science Week. There's a huge, diverse range of things to do, whether you want to be inside or outside. There's really something for everyone.
And one of them will be in the live assembly today. And the one that we're doing, as you mentioned, Anissa, is Let's Make a Sand Timer one.
Yes. So this activity has been submitted by Kaido. And we're essentially just using 2 plastic bottles. So again, things that you probably have lying around a house or are able to get at the supermarket pretty easily. And we're going to make a sand timer with those. So you might have used them in board games or just seen them in the classroom for sort of circle time. But this is your chance to make your own sand timer. You could use it at home, use it instead of your stop clock or stopwatch. And we can, try and use something that's less smartphone-y and something that's a bit more manual and fun that you might want to create yourself.
Well, we've got all the bits we need to create our own sand timers today. And we're going to follow along with you, Anissa. And for those of you listening at home who aren't aware, this is available as a video. Let's get started.
I've got all my equipment ready for the Let's Make a Sand Timer activity from the Early Years British Science Week 2024 activity pack. I've already done step 1. I used a bit of blue tack, placed it underneath my bottle cap just there, and used the screwdriver to sort of start the hole. So the next step is to secure these bottle caps together. So I've got some duct tape. I've just started with a small bit. That might be the easiest way to sort of secure it. But those two are, the 2 bottle caps are stuck together now. With one bottle, I have a 500ml bottle. I think as long as your 2 bottles are the same size, it doesn't really matter. I also have a funnel, which I had lying around the house, which should help prevent any spillages. But you can also make a funnel out of cardboard. So I'm going to fill this one bottle with this wonderfully green sand that the team at Early Years resources have provided me with. Now I've got to screw one of the caps on, make sure that's really tight, and then screw the other bottle on top. So these 2 are stuck together nicely now. I'll grab my not very fun smartphone stopwatch and we can start timing. I think it might be easier if there's two people here, so one can start the stopwatch and one can flip the bottle so it's as accurate as possible, but I'll give it a go. Success! Got a nice pink Sharpie to highlight. So we're at 36 seconds now. So it's, using it as a minute timer, I think it's good if you've got 2 500ml bottles because you get to a nice height. So I've got about a minute marker over here. So that's about how far up my stand went. It's such a fun thing to do, especially with coloured sand. It looks really pretty, and it's a nice way to commemorate British Science Week 2024.
Thanks, Anissa. That was so much fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Time for the next question. My favourite fun fact that I found was that the alarm clocks first appeared in 250 BC, which how crazy is that? When you think of like what an alarm clock is, but apparently it was a water clock that set off a whistle. How do you press snooze on that?
You have to wake up. No, there's no alternative back in 250 BC. That's amazing, isn't it? How people were able to create those inventions and with not very much. Yeah. So it goes to show we can definitely make a sand timer or a water clock, hopefully, or we have the potential to. Whether or not it goes well is another story.
Yeah, I mean, we're all scientists today. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you host Look Up, podcast which shares cosmic news and facts about the night sky. Is there anything exciting happening in March?
So we host a podcast monthly, but for March, because of British Science Week, we actually are going to do a special episode with a special guest, which I can't yet reveal, but that will be out in March. But in general, things to look for in the sky in March. I always, especially with students and with young people, I like to think about things that everyone can see. So often, most people don't have telescopes, and a lot of people live in cities and towns where your skies aren't particularly dark. So I always encourage people to look at the moon. That's great. And that's out during the day as well for younger audiences sometimes. So there's features on the moon you can admire this month, which we've written more about in a monthly blog, which I also write. I can tell you one exciting thing that's happening in the sky in March is the planet Mercury is going to be visible. So you can see Mercury just with your eyes. It looks like a faint point of light, like a star, but it's hard to see just with your eyes because it's the closest planet to the sun. It's always near the sun and we can't look at the sun with our eyes. But towards the end of March, it'll be at its greatest distance from the sun it can get, and it'll be visible in the early evening, so just after sunset, as a little point of light. So that's something you can have a look for.
That's amazing. So what would it look like? Just a little, like a kind of bigger star?
Like a star effectively, but it won't twinkle in the same way a star twinkles. Because it's a planet, it's much closer to us. So it won't look too much bigger in the sky, but it won't be a twinkly point. It'll be like a steady point of light.
Amazing. Yeah, I always think it, because, I mean, we both live in Manchester, which is a very, like, obviously heavily populated city with lots of bright lights. So it's always such a shame. Can't really see a lot of lights. And when we do, it's usually a plane coming over that.
Yeah. You can see, we do astronomy from our site in Greenwich, which is very light polluted because we have the sort of Canary Wharf and the rest of London all around us. Even sort of going somewhere like your garden or a park and trying not to look at any lamps or any street lights for like 10, 15 minutes. Even standing in the dark for that length of time, your eyes will adjust a little bit and you'll see a few stars. Never as many, but you will see something.
Greenwich is the home of the prime meridian line. What does this mean?
The equator splits the world into the northern and southern hemispheres. But we didn't used to have a line which would split the world into east and west. So the equator is our main line of latitude. We measure north and south from it. But we didn't have an equivalent for longitude, going east and west. And that's because you can split the Earth into two halves, east and west, at any point. Doesn't matter where the prime meridian is, where your line of longitude is. The only reason that we picked a line of longitude to be our prime meridian, our reference point, is because it gets really confusing if everyone uses different ones. So before we set the prime meridian, you could have one map which uses a reference point in America. So they're measuring east and west of a point in America. And you could have another map which uses a reference point in the UK and measuring east and west of the UK. But if you're in a more sort of global society, when everyone's interconnected and you're communicating with other countries, you have to use one reference point or else none of your maps make any sense. So we had to pick a reference point where everyone measured east or west from. And so there was a conference in 1884, and it was decided that Greenwich would be the home of the prime meridian, so the line which we measure east and west from. It could have been anywhere, not to downplay Greenwich and my home at the Royal Observatory, but it was chosen there mainly because we'd been a sort of observatory for hundreds of years already by that point, and so there were many maps and like almanacs, published books, which already used our prime meridian, our line of reference. So it's a line which runs from the North Pole to the South Pole, from north to south, cuts through Greenwich. And lots of other places.
Before we say goodbye, Anissa, how can people get involved with British Science Week?
We have the annual poster competition, and the closing date for that is the 28th of March, and it's pretty much what it says on the tin. You create a poster, and this year's theme is time, so it will be something to do with time, but your interpretation of it is completely your own. And one of the sort of judging criteria is creativity and how you interpret and show time in your poster. There are four categories. So there's early years, infant, junior, and senior. So everyone should be able to submit a poster within those categories. And you can go completely wild with sticking feathers, pom-poms. You could just do something drawn with crayon. You can, it's one of those things that you can let your creativity run free. You just take a picture of it and submit it on our website. We've got some really cool prizes up for grabs, as we usually do. So if you look on our website, there'll be a list of what you could potentially win. We also have one final category, which is the popular vote. So the runners-up of each of those categories gets uploaded to Facebook, and then we let the Great British public decide on who that final winner is.
Sounds so exciting. Yeah, it's the same British public who voted McBoth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where can listeners go to find more information about the British Science Association and British Science Week?
For British Science Week, head over to britishscienceweek.org or search British Science Week on Google, and you'll find details on everything we've just talked about on our website. We're also on social media, so Twitter /X and Facebook. We're at Science Week UK. And on Instagram, we are at British Science Association. Each year we see so much on social media. So the hashtag will be Hashtag BSW24. And yeah, we're so lucky to see all the amazing pictures and images and videos that people are just posting about their events. So it's a really, if you have a look at that during the week, I'm sure you'll come across some really cool ideas and events.
Where can listeners find more information about Royal Museums Greenwich?
We have a website, which is rmg.co.uk, so you can go to our website. If you're looking specifically for our British Science Week events, we've got lots of them on, so the live stream and assembly was only one. And if you just search British Science Week on our website, that will all pop up for you. So yeah, we've got lots of events on there for British Science Week. One in particular I wanted to highlight is I'm running a CPD session for primary teachers on the 12th of March, which is free and online, and we're going to be talking about time and space and how we teach those effectively to primary school children, because they ask such challenging questions.
It's always why.
Always why.
Always why. What kind of questions do they ask?
They often go very big. So, why does gravity exist? What's at the edge of the universe? That kind of thing. Which is great. It's very philosophical.
Real existential questions from the 3-year-olds.
In terms of sort of things linked to what we teach, the phases of the moon comes up a lot, because that is really challenging to get your head around, like visualizing why we have the phases of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we're talking about astronauts and space, it's where do they go to the toilet?
It's a valid question. Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. We've had a really great chat.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I hope everyone had a lovely British Science Week.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. It was an out of this world conversation. Thank you to all our guests for joining us on today's podcast. What was your key takeaway? My key takeaway was how easy it is to make a sand timer and other activities that you can get involved with in your classroom. What about you? I think my key takeaway was how time just fits with all sorts of different areas of the curriculum that I didn't even realise, like PE, obviously astronomy, as we've heard, but loads of things that I never even would have thought. Thank you to our guests again for joining us on this episode of Child's Play. Let us know your thoughts on today's episode and get in touch with us on our socials. Follow us for updates and leave a review. That's all for today. Bye!